Let's go, Grizzle Cannabis Con. Back to back with Grizzle Psychedelics Con this morning. This is the big show. This is the doubleheader. This is what the industry comes for because we bring the heat, we bring the magic, we bring the excitement. Scott, we got a lineup, man, a lineup.
Oh man,
tell them.
I hope you guys are buckled up because we got, again, it's always the industry leaders, the ones pushing everything forward. We're going to ask them the questions, high level, low level, their companies, what they're building. So get ready. We're kicking it off with Terrascend. Then we're going with the Cann Queen, Kim Rivers of Trulieve. And actually, we were going to have Verano. They had something come up very last minute. They had to cancel. But what we're going to do is then we're jumping right into Leafly, going to talk to the CEO of Leafly. And then we have two pretty cool panels. We're excited about this. We have the Future of Infused Beverage panel and Future Cannabis Products panel with some industry OGs there. And then we're going to kick it. We're going to end things off with our good friend Mitch from Merida. He has a high level view that few can match. And so it's always good to see what he's seeing, where he's putting his money. So get ready.
All right.
Yep. Let's do it. Yes, Terrascend.
All right, Grizzle Cannabis Con kicking off with one of our favorite friends, longtime family member of Grizzle Cannabis Con, Jason Wild, chairman of Terrascend. Welcome.
Welcome, Jason.
Nice to see you guys. How are you?
Very good.
So Jason, we gotta, because you're first, you get to talk about the cannabis industry, not necessarily Terrascend. Lucky you. So, in my life investing, I haven't seen an industry that's really split apart like this one. So you have fundamentals, what's happening, and then you have the stock prices. They are totally divorced right now. So I want to ask you as an operator, you see what's on the ground, and then you also see what's happening or not happening in Washington. Is the cannabis market healthy?
The cannabis market is healthy, and you have to look at it. It's sort of like real estate, I think, where it's every market is local. I think that is the case in the cannabis market. And I think that the markets that are not good are painting, everything in the same brush, even the companies that have operations that are in excellent markets. So I think that's hurt the overall perception. The lack of safe banking and all of that stuff. You would have thought that we would have been further along by this point, and we're not. And I think people are starting to take the other sort of view of the glass being half empty and saying, what if 280E never goes away? Which companies are going to be able to be sustainably profitable and cash flow positive after their capex and after their 280E exposure? And that is I think that at this point, I think it's that's more on the pessimistic view of
as an investor, you want to hear that stuff to see if I want to be buying something.
Exactly. And what I would say is also the things that I'm hearing more recently that are the things that I want to hear are how capex has dried up, down over, I spoke to one supplier into the industry, said capex projects are down like 60 to 80% year over year. So wow. Those are the things that, especially in these markets, Terrascend's more focused and has been, over the last few years in limited license states where we can make money in medical. We can eat while we dream, and then once rec comes, we have a 3x of our business from there. So in those places, I feel like this capital markets bear market in cannabis and more recently and everything else. It's actually what's going to happen is those medical markets like Maryland and PA, if they go wreck in the next year and a half or 2 years, there's actually going to be less supply that had come online, less capacity that had come online.
Great
because
point.
The prior year, say year and a half, there wasn't really a whole lot of money, around to be spent on that. So that's what we're starting to see more recently. Even the outdoor growers, from what I'm hearing, have largely cut back their plantings for this year. The ones in California and even Oklahoma, it's, you know, in those markets that are tough, it's sort of like what I've heard is that even the illegal operators are having a tough time making money, which is good because you know, you obviously the legal market, we're paying all our taxes and following all the rules. They're not. The fact that that capacity, it seems like it should be coming down from them as well. That's a good sign for the whole industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're an operator. I'm just curious how you think about operating in a market like this. Like, are you comfortable continuing to fund your growth with debt given uncertainties in Washington? Would you just pull back and because you underlying, you can be cash flow positive. So would you do that? Like, how are you thinking about the business?
Yeah, I think it's a balance. You never want to have too much debt because then you go from, I've seen companies go from having a couple of bad quarters where if they had debt, those couple of bad quarters, like, you know, they lost the company or whatever it was. So I've definitely witnessed that and want to make sure that we are not borrowing too much where we would ever feel uncomfortable if we had any stumbles or delays. We, as a company, we haven't done really any sale leasebacks. So
you still have that lever.
We still have that lever, but that doesn't even mean I want to go do sale leasebacks. But those properties could be, there's more availability of getting more asset-based backed loans, like almost like a mortgage or or you know, in the U.S. a home equity line against a facility that you already own. I think we have a lot of opportunities there. We have a lot of opportunities. You know, most of these cannabis companies, the ones that didn't sell everything through sale leasebacks, like the real estate market, as everybody knows, has gone up, and it's still still holding up pretty well. So you know, I'll give our Canadian facility as an example. We a year ago or 2 years ago, that was valued at $12 million, and we had, I think, a $7 million mortgage against it. We just got a new appraisal done, and it's valued at $21 million. So a lot of companies are pretty real estate rich, just because it was easier if you owned your property and you couldn't get a mortgage and all of that. I think for us, there's an opportunity to unlock value in multiple different ways, since we have so much equity in a lot of these properties. It could be selling it and moving to a different place. It could be doing a sale leaseback, or in the case in Canada, increasing the size of our mortgage, which is like, I think we pay, I don't know, 8% or so. So we've got a lot of options. I'm also not completely against, and this wouldn't be to fund CapEx per se, but I'm not completely against. There are so many mom and pop private assets that are out there where you could buy them at such a low multiple that it's still very accretive to our company in terms of diluting ourselves with those shares. So I'm not totally if I could buy something at two times pro forma EBITDA, I'm not afraid to use equity for that either, and that helps. That's obviously balance. That helps your balance sheet.
Jason, is that the play? Like, is that the play right now in the smart we're getting right now, where if you want to be opportunistic, that is an aggressive against the grain move here, where others are there's clear retrenching, and you're not going to see volumes come through, and you guys could play that. You've already done Gage, which we liked a lot, and I think we're yet to see just the real opportunity on, like, that's still early days there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're rolling out, we put out a press release a few days ago. We're rolling out cookies and Gage branded flower and vapes in New Jersey this Saturday. So Gage is being rolled out in Jersey imminently. And we're going to have more form factors that we're going to be rolling out, and more strains. We'll be launching all their genetics and all the cookies genetics in Jersey. And then Gage will be following in the next month or so. We'll be rolling out in PA and some other places as well. So we're definitely going to be making more of a splash in terms of rolling out some of our Michigan brands elsewhere. But in terms of acquisition opportunities and opportunistic opportunities, that's it. Like we have been like still, we say it, we have our BD call every week. And yesterday we were talking about it, BD and M&A for Terrascend. And we cannot have any, FOMO here. There is none of it's not like this is the opposite of 2 years ago. There's practically, no competition for a lot of these assets, especially for us, because we haven't, we're not in Massachusetts and a lot of these other East Coast states where you have the limits, like we're the only buyer.
Yeah.
So I think that because we have a wide open map and because we can be the most opportunistic, I feel like we're going to be able to buy something for like, 2 or 3 times run rate EBITDA. Yeah. But, that's not enough now based upon the new reality of, how the market is treating all these companies. You need to also know that this is going to be a sustainable business post CapEx and 280E over time. And those are really, just because, you could buy something for 3 times, run rate, but it could end up being, 10 times if the business is not in good shape, they weren't doing the right stuff. They were, so we're still looking at them, very, very selectively. But we feel like the longer and longer we wait, the more these, they're going to get to the price. They're not there right now. They're going to get to the price where it's like, we're crazy if we don't do it,
Now, you talked about brands. I wanted to ask you because Terrascend has been one of the most aggressive, I'd say, multi-state operator when it comes to leveraging partnerships. Do you think is the future of brands, is it partnerships with brands or is it in-house? Or is it a mix? Like, what are you thinking at this point? It looks like.
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I think we learned from the cookies, from actually the Michigan relationship with cookies, that when you carry I think that it's definitely the most well-known, respected cannabis brand in the country. When you have a product like that in your stores, then people will drive from further away to go there. It's not about convenience. Lots of stores do well because they're on the side of a highway. But then there's other stores that people come from further away to get there because there's something different, and that's what cookies is. And it draws the people that we want to appeal to, which are the people that are higher end connoisseurs, usually consume larger volumes of product, and buy more stuff from you over the course of over a week or a month. So that's what we want to do with cookies in our stores everywhere. We think we have a good deal with cookies, and we can have a good profitable business growing and selling their genetics. But we also think that it adds a little bit of a halo effect to the rest of our brands. And if we want to, our brand in Pennsylvania and New Jersey that we launched with is Kind Tree, and it's been doing, in Jersey, like I think if you look at all the Reddit reviews and all that, I think it's considered like in the amongst the top 2 out of all of the flower brands in the state. But nobody knows Kind Tree. So if we get them to come in and they buy and they buy cookies, and most of them are going to know that also it was grown in the same place by the same people, and very often they'll fill their basket with some other products as well. If we can get them to,
that's what I was going to ask you. So there is some synergies there.
Totally.
Okay.
I think it definitely adds a halo effect to the brand, and it brings in more people to try our other brands. And that's
great answer.
That's the approach. We would love to have other brands that we develop that become huge brands. I think so much of it is based upon quality. So and we're definitely highly focused on that. But if there are other brands that we know are going to bring people in the store and that consumers want, then we want to have them. Like I look at it as where I wear like my pharmacist hat for like looking at other businesses and looking at analogies. But it's like right now we're like Merck and Pfizer, and we're also like CVS and Walgreens. Well, if we're like CVS and Walgreens in terms of our dispensaries, then I want to carry all the products that consumers want the most. I don't want to only carry the stuff that is, or I think it's short term to only carry the stuff that we can make the most money on. We should be looking first at what customers want, because that's going to build the most successful retail.
I got a comment here. I'll relay. I love Terrascend brand Kind Tree products and packaging. I'm a medical patient in PA. So there's a.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's
all right,
awesome.
Jason, to wrap things up, if you look at Terrascend, there are a lot of moving parts for you guys. Can you help investors anticipate what improvements are happening in quarter 2, 3, 4? New Jersey's now open, no vape recall. Like what should they expect?
Yes. So New Jersey's open. That opened like a third of the way through the quarter. So we'll see nice, sequential revenue growth and profitability growth. Jersey, all you're going to see though is a couple of months. So that's really going to progress even more so into Q3 and Q4 because we think that business is going to be a lot bigger. We're going to be opening Lodi, which we think is going to be our top store in the country. Ability to do. We think based upon our other stores, over $50 million in revenue run rate pretty quickly. And we also have the wholesale opportunity in Jersey. So that's going to be a huge driver of profitability and revenue. Pennsylvania, we don't have the vape, that vape ban from the Pennsylvania DOH. They actually reversed it a few weeks ago anyway. But it's not as important as it was because we've been able to convert the majority of our customers over to our new, what the DOH considered compliant. So we've got growth there versus Q1 and growth in overall flower sales. We had told people about PA when we made the big change last summer that quality was going to get, 1,000,000 times better. But then we were going to get new strains in towards in December. Or we were going to be limited by not having new genetics until they opened up the window. They opened it up in December, and we're launching all of those strains now, and they are being received really, really well. So that's PA, and PA hopefully hopefully second half of next year, and Maryland going to be on the ballot this November. Even more likely goes rec, second half of next year. We're building out our facility there to expand and to be fully ready for that. Michigan, continue to grow through potential acquisitions, store openings, margins getting much better as we bring in extraction in-house and manufacturing. That all just came online in the last few weeks. So we'll see some of that in Q2. The rest of, much more so the impact from that in Q3 and Q4. And overall as a company, as I look at us compared to, all the other competitors in the space, I think that what we have going for us is that we've got such a young sort of set of assets relative to maturity. If you consider rec being more mature, and it doesn't mean rec when we get out of what feels like a recession, and some things change, it doesn't mean that rec won't pick up to a normal, rate of growth. We think it will, but we are protected by the fact that the majority of our business over the next couple of years is going to be from brand new rec states, and we think we're going to be one of the top 3 operators in all 3 of those states. So
wow, that's an amazing rundown. Thank you. That was thorough. All right. So Jason, thank you so much for being here. We're always lucky when you stop by with your insights, and we're excited to watch what's going to happen with Terrascend over the next 9 months of this year.
And guys, if you are watching on Twitter, would really appreciate a lot of time, effort, and energy to bring on some of these great guests. Give it the retweet, give it the like. Same for YouTube. Hit that like, and also, if you guys have questions. Twitter's really mucked around with the format of lives there, where it's not easy to catch questions there. You can go to YouTube, way easier to catch questions. Morgan's been hitting hard with great questions. Sounds like, Jason, we'll have to bring you back onto a Twitter Spaces, an abridged, longer version. We'll have you back, always good fun.
Is there a Verano spot that's open? You want me to come back in about 45 minutes?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Just pop back in the Zooms. Slide into the Zooms.
All right,
see you later, Jason.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right, next, we're coming right up with Trulieve next. Don't go anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Grizzle Cannabis Con, and it's not a Grizzle Cannabis Con unless we have the queen of cannabis herself, Kim Rivers, Trulieve. Kim, how are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you? Thanks so much
Very
for having
good.
me. Yeah.
So Kim, you're lucky you didn't go first, so we don't have to talk about industry stuff. We can just talk about Trulieve stuff. So
Awesome.
I wanted to start with an interesting question. I've been trying to get my head around this. How
Okay.
you guys think of wholesale versus retail? Like, how do you decide when I'm going to ramp up wholesale? The market is right for that, or I'm going to lean on retail. Like, from an operator's point of view, take an investor into your thought process.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we are, happy that we have the largest scaled retail presence in the U.S. We have 168 current operating retail locations across the U.S. But we have also been focusing on branded products, and certainly since harvest, developing our suite of branded products. And, we talk a lot internally and currently as part of our strategic plan for this year and likely going into next year is this concept and notion of branded product through branded retail. And so we love to control and to have influence over the entire customer journey. We believe that certainly starts with most customers, 80% of customers find us online and through a mobile device. Actually, fun fact, we had over 100 million hits on our website in the first quarter of this year. So, very robust platform there. And so we really are focused on the customer journey, whether or not that's, again, coming into through our retail channels and branded product through branded retail, or if it's through our branded product through our wholesale business. We certainly have led with retail. We're very comfortable in the retail space and think that there's significant runway left within the cannabis markets and certainly in developing cannabis markets as we think about going into markets like Georgia, certainly in West Virginia, what we're experiencing to really have stickiness of consumer loyalty through that branded product with branded retail. Now, as we all know, the cannabis industry is interesting in the fact that there's different regulatory requirements market to market. And oftentimes, you may be capped in terms of the amount of retail presence you can actually achieve. For us, it's all about penetrating and achieving scale and depth in a market. And so we like to have tools in our toolbox to be able to accomplish that ultimate goal. And so while we certainly prefer to lead with branded product through branded retail, we absolutely will diversify with a wholesale strategy to support, again, that market penetration in markets where that's a requirement and where that's necessary. I'm very, very excited about the work that we're doing in the brand space. I'm very excited about our catalog of brands that we have to offer, again, on a combined basis. We've been spending a lot of time refining and developing and making sure that we're speaking to consumers in each one of those tiered segments. And that also, as we're looking at retail shelves, not only ours, but quite frankly, our dispensary partners, that we're thoughtful in terms of how and where our products will be placed and how they will resonate with particular segments in consumer need states across categories. So lots of exciting work that we've been doing and that we'll continue to do. But I mean, I think that, again, we like to lean into and believe that this is an optimal time to lean into, again, really having that significant and reciprocal relationship with that customer, which we like to have as much influence over that journey as possible. So branded product through branded retail.
So I have a second part to that, just talking on the retail. What does the future of brands look like for you? Would you ultimately want a Trulieve store to be like the Trader Joe's of cannabis, where it's Trulieve products only? Or do you think there's a mix is ultimately where it goes of partnerships and in-house?
Sure. So, I mean, I think what we've demonstrated, right, is a house of brand strategy, certainly. So we will have our portfolio of products. Of course, even today, we have brand partnerships across different subcategories that are both regional, sometimes actually even local, and then also national. And so we definitely think that, again, it really, we're customer obsessed. And so it's really what the customer wants and what the customer expects and giving them the best experience, which we think is a mix of our own house of brands coupled with curated partner brands that, again, speak to those specific requirements and needs of that customer in that market. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, it's something that we really, again, think about a lot. Every store, every location is not created equal by any means. And understanding and being able to drill down to the demographics and the requirements and the preferences of that particular customer base, which, by the way, is also evolving as more and more folks find cannabis, or in a market that perhaps is, going recreational from medical. So that's constant work. That's not a set it and forget it, which informs our brand mix, our product mix that are on those shelves, as well as the partners that we carry, again, among those particular categories in those stores as well. But if you lose sight of that and you think that it's a one size fits all, I think that it's you've unfortunately, I think, lost touch with the customer, which again is something that we're very, very focused on.
So it sounds like you're in a unique position because you have such a big retail presence,
Yeah.
but it sounds like this still is at the stage of cannabis. There's a lot of testing. You just need to figure out exactly what the customer wants. What they want is always changing. And so that's kind of sounds like what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think also, leaning into data and technology to help us further understand and to help us refine and make sure that we are continuing to learn about customer behavior. It's very different if you have a suite of 3 stores, 4 stores, 6 stores, even 10, 20 stores, right? To really understand and feel very connected to that customer. As you scale, as you get bigger, we have to implement technology solutions to make sure that we still are actively listening. And we have a ton of feedback loop solutions within Trulieve, some organic that have been with us since the very beginning, i.e. making sure that we're actually in touch with our bud tenders, our frontline folks, giving them a platform to provide feedback real time so that we understand what they're hearing. Of course, our frictionless return policy, which still represents less than 1% of products across the market, but that gives us feedback, right? What's not working? Why would someone bring something back? And then also overlaying data on top of that to, again, A/B test messaging, understand what's driving consumer behavior, understanding why and what speaks to the 1% of concentrate users in a certain demographic in Eastern Pennsylvania, as an example, right? And is that different than Western Pennsylvania concentrate users? And so again, digging into those layers and having the sophistication and making the investment now so that we're continuing, and by the way, there's an AI feature to that as well, so that we're continuing to mine that data and continuing to refine right product, right location, right form factor, right price.
So Kim, I have a question, just learnings from more mature markets, say Florida. How did you, talking about the data and just the evolution, obviously consumers themselves are evolving within your states. Just how do you take those learnings and then, allow yourself to leapfrog into your new jurisdictions as opposed to having to, try to figure it all out again? Or are the regions so different that different things work in different areas?
So we certainly can analogize, right? I mean, and so we certainly can take certain markets and certain, again, have a very large database and a very large base of information and customer data and segment out, right? And what are the common threads? Can we make, and then it's a lot of A/B testing, right? So, okay, we think our hypothesis is that this region and this region are similar for these reasons, right? Maybe it's the spending range, maybe it's maybe it's military makeup, maybe it's, whatever it is, right? And so we're gonna then run, right, an A/B test to see, okay, is that actually true? Is that false? How are they different? How are they the same? And then again, to your point, then we can kind of deploy once we understand those similarities or those differences. I would also note that another really, I think, critical differentiator for us is our ability to innovate and roll out product and again, test that over a large, really in a scaled way and get data back very quickly in terms of how products and how new products are resonating with customers prior to a national launch. And we started working in that vein as well, which is really exciting. So I think our understanding of customer response to new products, as well as our ability to get it right and then launch it nationally, is another differentiator that I'm really excited about.
So with your kind of unparalleled level of data, this is a good question I'd like to ask you is, what is a product format you're most excited about? Is it still flower? And is there an emerging format you think that isn't very popular yet or not on the radar that people should care more about or watch for?
So I'm always excited about flower because I'm a flower person. So personally, I'm always excited about flower, and there continues to be really interesting genetic advancements and whatnot on the flower side. We have a full-blown tissue culture lab, and I remain excited about what we're able to do on the flower side.
And consumers continue to be excited as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we just yesterday toured a group of analysts through our brand new 750,000 square foot site here in Florida. High level of automation increases actually our human connection with the plant by making it more efficient in terms of how we're able to bring the plants actually to our workers. And so it's really, there's some exciting things happening there. That being said, I would say from a category perspective, I'm really excited and interested in the minor cannabinoid space. I think that I can see a shift ultimately in really, again, focusing on need states and focusing on effects, particularly for new entrants and folks that aren't as familiar with the cannabis space. And I think minor cannabinoid isolation and really bringing that in a scaled way to the market, I think has a lot of interest and appeal. Certainly, we've seen huge uptake in our CBN formulations and are working on some other minor cannabinoid formulations as well. I would say, to answer your second question, in terms of where I think and what I think is coming, there's been a lot of hype around the beverage space. I think we've talked about the fact that beverages are great, but it's, the distribution is just off right now. I think that that's a big hit when it's an alternative and it's sitting next to the beer section in your local supermarket. I think it's hard when it's in a dispensary. So we've been developing a powder formulation that's a grab and go packet, think Crystal Light, that fizzes, et cetera, that you can throw in your purse or your pocket on the way out the door. That's a microdose. And I'm very excited about that as a bridge product between now and when we get to the place where, again, distribution becomes more of a reality for a true pre-mixed beverage.
How far away are we from those minor cannabinoids really picking up based on the technology you're seeing to synthesize them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the technology is there. I think right now we're in the genetic discovery phase. So it really starts with the plant, right? Everything that we do starts with the plant. So, making sure that we have a curated genetic library that has those elements and those particular cannabinoids expressed in greater quantities so that we can then, more efficiently extract. I think that's been the challenge to date with some of those products, is just how to, again, at scale, right? Yes, you can do it in a craft way, but we're always looking for, is there a way to ramp this up, and what's that look like? So, I think, again, we've had great success with CBN, and so now it's a matter of dialing that in. It's similar technology for the others, so it's just a matter of getting the kind of the front of the pipeline ramped up.
Interesting. Okay. Now, I just wanted to ask you a question on the financial side. So given the uncertainties in Washington, and we really don't know the timeline at this point, that we're hopeful for different things to come down the pipe, are you comfortable continuing to fund growth with debt from where Trulieve sits now? How do you think about funding?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the positive news is, right, like, we have a strong balance sheet, we are cash flow positive from operations. So we are going to continue, just like we always have, to fund organic growth through what's there today, and have publicly stated, and we'll reiterate, that we have enough cash on hand to certainly get us past this year's growth plan and growth trajectory, and to be able to meet our guidance and what we've said. So I feel very good and comfortable, and I've always said, listen, I love the high growth, and I love this industry, and I love being in my role, but I'm not a CEO that wants to lay awake at night wondering how to keep the lights on. So we will never put Trulieve in that position, and that's been part of our commitment to financial discipline from the very beginning. So that remains true. As it relates to other debt, it all depends, right? I mean, what's the rate? What's the term? What are what are our plans to do with that debt? I think that again, I'm very comfortable in our position as having, I believe, some of the leading financials in the industry, and our ability to have access to capital when others may not. So I do think that there's going to be some opportunity here ahead as the waters continue to get a bit choppy for others. And while it's sometimes difficult as a shareholder, I'm the largest shareholder of Trulieve too, and in the industry, I think that really it's exciting for us, and we're really pumped up about where we sit vis-a-vis the rest of the industry and the opportunities that we believe that we'll be best positioned to take advantage of that are ahead.
Maybe a point there, but if really in these downturns, obviously tough. It's tough for all investors, everyone, but to be a leader, that is one of the real that's one of the benefits of a downturn where it really washes out some of the marginal players. I know Jason talked about it in terms of, we're seeing a pullback and growing, et cetera, but you kind of need to see this kind of wash out once in a while. And I think the last 10 years, just given just the amount of, just how easy it was to get money, perhaps this is one of the best things to happen to the industry.
I actually couldn't agree more. Again, as hard as that is, and look, we always want everyone to, be successful, and I think that will still happen, right? I think it's just a matter of what your time horizon is on that. And when we kind of zoom out and we look at how Trulieve has, positioned ourselves in sort of a similar, completely similar from a macro perspective, but similar activity if we look at late 19, early 20, right? And really the decisions that we made, our ability to be, again, very strategy driven and strategy led and committed to our strategic plan, and looking for, again, those opportunities that meet our stated goals and that we understand and that we feel comfortable with in terms of our ability to quickly integrate and incorporate and then leverage and again kind of catapult ourselves as a company forward. So I think for me, again, our team and myself and our board, we actually do view this as a positive and potentially actually as a catalyst for Trulieve into the future.
Yeah. So I just wrote one last one for me is, do you still think the future for you is there's value to expanding your geography into legalization, whatever that comes? Do you still have that feeling?
I mean, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think, again, we've, we're a company that we lay out a strategic plan and we do what we say we're going to do. We constantly evaluate the inputs to make sure that we're continuing to be comfortable on that path. But, right now we continue to be very, very comfortable in our regional hub strategy that we've communicated, I think repeatedly to the market. I think that we see certainly opportunities, and because of that commitment, we now have built out teams that are robust and that we're I'm very proud of in each of those hubs that have capacity and will have capacity to bring on additional states, additional markets, additional tuck-ins, what have you, underneath them, which is the entire one of the reasons that we organized that way. And so it allows us to execute faster. It allows us to execute more efficiently in this growing platform. That being said, I will also mention that we're very, very comfortable with organic growth. I think we have a proven track record of success in the organic growth channel. And we're also very comfortable and very excited, quite frankly, about some licensing opportunities that are coming up. So for us, it's not a one size fits all. We don't just grow in one particular way. We're very, very comfortable in all of those things simultaneously. I mean, we closed 7 M&A deals last year. We won 2 licenses, and then you can look at our organic growth in terms of how much capacity and how many retail stores we opened organically across our markets. I think it was almost 1 million square feet. I mean, so we're comfortable in all of those arenas and expect to continue to be very active in each of those.
Great. Well, Kim, thank you always for coming on and giving us your insights. And it's been rewarding for us, I'm sure, for you to see where you've come when we first met in 2018 to where Trulieve is now. It's pretty incredible. I know you must pitch yourself.
And that tweet was so kind of you last for our last Cannabis Con. It was just like memories. Yeah, you know what? But it's incredible to see the growth. Obviously, Grizzle and Trulieve, Ultra, and we can't wait for the next one to keep following the growth. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And a message for everyone out there watching on YouTube. There's a ton of people on YouTube. Kim's bringing the heat. Grizzle setting up the heat. Give it the thumbs up. Give it the thumbs up. There's a ton of you. There's only a few of those thumbs up. And if you're on Twitter fam knows what's going on. The retweet, the likes. Everyone, thank you very much. We'll be back. A little bit of a break, Scott.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break and we'll be back with Leafly. So thank you to Kim.
Thanks, y'all.
right, welcome back to Grizzle Cannabis Con, the one, the only, the best in the industry. Guys, thank you so much for those thumbs ups, the likes. We got a good one
It
here.
powers us up. We're going hard all day. So I'm very excited about our next guest. You know, you've heard, if you've tuned into Cannabis Cons before, there's a lot of talk about the plant. But now we have a company where the plant really comes second to data, which is what they're all about. And so we have the CEO, Yoko Miyashita of Leafly. Yoko, welcome to the program.
Hey, so great to be here with you guys.
Great to have you.
So let's start it off where I think Leafly is unique among our presenters today because you're a data first company and a cannabis company second. So for people not familiar with Leafly, can you give our viewers a quick rundown of kind of what's a typical customer interaction with Leafly?
Yeah, so excited to tell you about Leafly. We're a NASDAQ traded LFLY non-plant touching cannabis technology and information company.
Important point there. I gotta emphasize that, guys. So, you know, there's so much buzz around, okay, NYSE listing, NASDAQ. They are listed.
We are listed,
They're
yes.
in the US. Yeah, we don't need to talk about Washington and US listing.
Yeah.
We're done with that. Let's move along.
We are US listed, publicly traded, and I will just add, ring the bell on 420 with a big billboard.
Oh,
wow,
yeah.
that's a big one. All right.
Well played.
But we're a content-driven marketplace. What does that mean? We've been helping consumers navigate their cannabis journey with unique educational and information content. Then we match them to legal brands and retailers that carry the products they want. We talked about data. Where does this start? We have been publishing on the plant for over 12 years, and we are known worldwide for our strains database. Let's break that down. We talk about the plant. We have over 6,000 entries in our strains database. We talk about this database. What is it? We break down the strains. We tell you chemical composition. And more importantly, we give you the data that's both lab sourced, from testing from state labs, as well as subjective data from our consumers who tell us how a strain made them feel. We have over 1.3 million consumer reviews. Why is that important? Because people who talk about the plant, people who truly understand this plant, know the underlying complexity and what we consider the magic of that. But who can break it down for consumers? No one else can do it like we can. We've got over 11,000 news and information articles, and we have search and transactional data. What is that? That's first-party data captured at the top of funnel as consumers are embarking on their cannabis journeys. What does that mean? They're coming to us to answer their questions, and in that process, we learn about their shopping habits, what they're interested in, and we understand that at a local market level. Just think about that for a second in terms of the broad applicability of that data. We use it to power our platform. We use it to help consumers make smarter decisions about cannabis, but there's a lot of downstream that you can do from there. And one other thing I'll say about that is this content first approach, it allows us to build consumer demand on the platform even before markets legalize. If you're plant touching, you got to wait for that trigger. You got to wait for that legalization moment to start, right? But for us, because this is information and education, we are aggregating consumers way before markets legalize.
Yeah, so legalization isn't slowing the lack of legalization isn't slowing you down, and you're already connecting consumers with brands and dispensaries, right? So on that point, I'm wondering, does legalization open up any doors for you? Most people talk about as the be all end all.
Right. For us, we're not dependent on it. It's additive for our business, right? So we grow and scale today. There's a ton of interest and activity in cannabis that's already being monetized on our platform. And we look at each of those incremental legalization moments as, yeah, that's great. It's great for the industry. It's great for consumers. But for us, we are already growing and scaling and monetizing that interest.
Gotcha. Now, can you talk a little bit about what are you focused on building over the next year at Leafly?
Next year and building is, and this is where we're rooted. Our mission is delivering value. And this is where it gets interesting, right? And kind of complex. We're serving consumers. We're serving retailers. We're serving brands. So it's all about executing against roadmap initiatives to deliver that value. On the consumer side, we're meeting them where they're shopping. What does that mean? Consumers shop depending on the state in different ways. I'm in Washington State. We can do pickup, order online, pick up in store. There's no delivery here. But in California, how do consumers want to get their weed? They want delivery. So we launched a delivery gateway just this past quarter. What does that mean? When you shop for delivery, you got different parameters, right? You got to enter your address. You want to know if there's a fee. You want to know if there's a minimum basket size. So we launched a new gateway for delivery shoppers to shop in the way they want. And for us, it's also, mentioned earlier about that content and that IP. How do you really drive really awesome personalized experiences? I'm going to point you to our strains page where you can take a strains quiz right now in terms of finding the right strains for your needs and matching you to that. Data allows you to do that. On the retailer side, you're showing this slide here. We've done a phenomenal job of aggregating retailers on our platform, and that's primarily through inbound leads. What does that mean? Not external marketing spend, but retailers know that consumers are on the Leafly platform. They're engaged, they're learning about it, they want to get in front of them. So we're very focused on building out that retailer network on a market by market basis, and then making it easy for those retailers to attract customers on our platform. So that means reducing friction. What does reducing friction look like in the technology space? What do you need to do to really leverage consumer activity on our platform? You got to get a menu posted so consumers can order. How do you get a menu posted? We're going to do the heavy lifting for you and integrate with POS providers. That just means
interesting. So if I understand, maybe I can just step back. So is that idea that, okay, I'm looking at, someone comes onto the Leafly platform and they can ultimately order right through to the dispensary?
Yes.
Incredible.
Oh, I should have even broken that even further. Yeah.
So it's not like I'm not popping to their website. Like I can do it all seamlessly.
Placing that order on Leafly. You're not paying on Leafly. You are picking up, but think about how sticky that is. My goal in serving consumers is helping you figure out your strains, helping you figure out your products. And think about this. This is still a choppy supply chain, right? I think about my favorite products I buy in my favorite dispensary. Sometimes it's not there 2 weeks later when I go back. So that pulling that consumer experience all the way through and helping them locate what they want at the store nearest them, that's high value to consumers. In turn, that's really sticky for retailers. That's tremendous value you can show them when you bring a shopper through their doors through an actual order that they've placed on our platform.
Now, I'm curious, when you look at desktop versus mobile for you guys, is desktop bigger right now, but you anticipate mobile being bigger? Like,
hands down mobile. Yeah, and let's break that down, right? It's mobile web, but where we also get super excited on the consumer side, native app experience.
Yeah.
But is that something that you've always had, or is it new, growing, or how?
We've always had the native app, and it's actually an award-winning cannabis app several years ago, which might as well be a lifetime in cannabis use. But it's so clear to us in the data and how our app users transact that they love ordering. And so we now have both pickup and delivery in states where delivery is available through our app. But think also about, what does the native app allow you to do? I don't know if this is probably talked about, but it's really hard to advertise on digital platforms, right? Not permitted. And so you've got really constrained channels in how you can market. Same thing for us as a cannabis company. But when you can get a consumer to download our app, what they want to do, how you can market to them through push notifications, the deals you can get out to them, we see such great engagement there. So for us, as we're thinking about the year ahead, doubling down on that app experience, because the retention is so great, the activity is so great. They're really our power users, and we want to keep them really highly entertained and engaged and rewarded for being on our app.
So maybe I feel like that's a great place to wrap up. So one of your initiatives is to make the app just that much better for consumers. If you had to rank the rest of your initiatives, I'll list out some things. Maybe you can rank them for me. So you have user traffic, more relevant search results, more exhaustive results, more dispensary partners. How do you what would be top of the list?
One more I'm going to add, brand partners. Why do we get excited about brand partners? You just showed about 5,400 retailers on our platform, over 50% market penetration across all retailers. Brands, right? Brands is almost, by our measure, 18,000 TAM, almost double that of retailers. Why? Because we can go with the infused brands, we can work with other cannabinoid providers, your Delta 8s, your Delta O's, and then you've got your ancillary services and products. We have now built a product suite on the brand side, traditionally a digital advertising product that looks a lot like our retailer product. Brand listing in the form of recurring revenue subscription and premium advertising units. What does that look like? That's retailer ad network, allowing that brand to advertise at the bottom of the funnel as consumers making a product decision. We talked about personalization. We talked about helping consumers find the right product. Now imagine the ability for a brand to advertise the product that we have helped consumers identify as the one that's right for them. And a brand can then advertise and say, hey, I've got your strain. I've got a pre-roll in your strain. I've got I've got a concentrate in your strain. And that's super exciting because that allows us in the same digital real estate to both monetize the retailer and monetize the brand. And on the brand side, much larger opportunity. So we've now got the right technology and product suite to go after both the retailer and brand side of this space.
Wow.
Exciting.
So Yoko, this has been eye-opening for us because we spent so much time in the plant touching, and you guys came on our radar, relatively recently. So we've been digging in. So thank you so much for giving us your insight. I mean, everyone else should take a look. And I think we're going to have to bring you back to talk more about Leafly.
Would love to join you.
Be great.
Yoko, thank you
All
so
right, that
much.
was Yoko Miyashita, CEO of Leafly.
Guys, stay tuned. We got a ton more coming. Grizzle Cannabis Con. It was followed by Grizzle Psychedelics Con. If you missed that, go check that out. Scott, who we got next?
Ooh, next we got the future of infused beverages.
Oh, yeah.
You know how Grizzle loves or hates infused beverages, depending on how you
No,
put it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
yeah. Welcome back to Grizzle Cannabis Con. We got a great panel right now. Guys, we're always bringing the heat. Listen, if you're on YouTube, I know people out there saying, listen, they're loving the back-to-back psychedelics, cannabis. Show some love, show the thumbs up on Twitter. If you're watching the retweets, we appreciate all of that. Scott, we got a panel, man. We got a panel.
Man, this is the panel near and dear to my heart. So if you guys have been following Grizzle, you know that I'm a infused beverage connoisseur for good and bad. If you ever saw a live stream one Friday afternoon, Tom and I tested all the infused beverages that were coming out of Canada, and it wasn't pretty. I'll tell you.
The early stuff was, to put it lightly, horrendous.
It tasted like if we dumped a bunch of sodas together and stirred them up, is what you get. So what's nice is we have two leaders in the industry who are really pushing things forward. If you look at what they're doing, it's night and day from what we tasted, even like a year ago. So we're very excited to talk to the founders of both Happi and Cann, Lisa Hurwitz, founder of Happi, and Jake Bullock, founder of Cann. So thank you both for being with us.
Great to be here, guys. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, so let me start off with infused beverages. They are one of the fastest growing formats in cannabis, but it is still a small piece of the pie compared to other formats. What do you guys think it will take to bring those beverages from niche to mass adoption?
It's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
I think, it is a very small part of the category today, something we see in each market, sort of, 1 to 2% for our market in California. It started at 1, we've grown it to 2, that's exciting. But still really small when you look at the overall dispensary, share. And we kind of think that's the wrong way to think about it, right? Our view is that the opportunity here is not to get people to smoke that smoke weed today to drink weed, right? It's rather to get people that are thinking about alcohol. Maybe they're going to have a glass of wine or a couple beers tonight to have a cannabis beverage instead. And we're talking about a much larger category of from the alcoholic beverage side. And you only really need to take 10% of that to have, $10 billion beverage category in the US. And so, or bigger. And so we think that that's really the opportunity. And what's going to get us there are brands, brands like Happi, brands like Cann that are bringing a high level of sophistication around the flavor experience, around the brand experience, right? A brand at the end of the day is what does it say about you when you purchase it? That is really the next wave of products. And they're approachable, right? There's something very intuitive about taking a can, cracking it open and drinking it. And I think that's really the future of what the cannabis industry needs to be leaning into, those mainstream consumers, as opposed to, what we think is kind of happening now, which is sort of, trying to sell a lot of really high potency cannabis to, high tolerance consumers. That only can last for so long.
Yeah, I mean, same as, as Jake mentioned, getting that canna curious consumer in, right, who is going to grow the entire category. And it's going to grow the whole cannabis category overall too, edibles in addition to beverages. But we really think that's the sweet spot. I would also say offsite consumption is huge. So if you think about where people drink alcohol, they don't only drink it at home, right? They drink it at bars and restaurants and sporting events and concerts. So once the market really opens up and you can have cannabis beverages like you could have alcoholic beverages in those places, that's going to make a really big difference. And I think the third thing we see is the dispensary format isn't really conducive to selling beverage right now. I think, Jake operates in California, Happi is in Michigan. Most of the time we're lucky if there's a fridge in a dispensary, and, Happi is quite often buried behind the counter. That makes it really difficult for even the current dispensary consumers to come in, see the product, find the product. So the more we can do to open it up and truly have big refrigerators and coolers the way liquor stores or grocery stores do, I think that's going to change the game quite a bit as well.
Do infused beverages have to be refrigerated, or is there any formulation that can stay at room temperature?
They don't have to be refrigerated, at least our products don't. But I think the point that Lisa's making is that when they are refrigerated, they are much more appealing to consumers. So there's like an old beverage adage that if it's cold, it can be sold. And I think the data is like 8 to 1. If you think about what sells out of the refrigerated section versus out of the center aisle. And so
that's an incredible number.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, some of it's instant gratification, right? I mean, think about it. If you want to crack open a cold beer today, or you want to go crack open, a mixed kind of cocktail, you want to grab it right out of the fridge, or you're bringing it home for a party or an event. So to Jake's point, it's about that experience. Happi also does not need to be refrigerated. It tastes better refrigerated, and we, recommend that. But I think the main point is there is no kind of instant gratification in the dispensaries today, quite often, because there is no kind of display for beverages that allows for that.
So Lisa, can I just ask how do you envision that future looking like? Is it like an evolution of the dispensary itself, or is it some kind of, like, are we talking about, like, maybe you can help me dream it out? Because I know exactly the problem you're talking about. It's literally like a skinny bar fridge that you'd have in your home.
Right. I mean, ideally we get out of, we can get cannabis out of a separate retail channel altogether, right? Ideally it can be bought and sold, and beverage in particular, in liquor stores and grocery stores, and it becomes much more mainstream. I think that's very far off. I think the interim is a dispensary experience that doesn't feel like a head shop. And I think California is in a different league, in my opinion, in terms of how they've evolved that dispensary experience. But you go to some of these limited license states, take Michigan or the Northeast, where it's still much more, it's developing. And there really is no great retail formats. These dispensaries still feel quite like head shops. Like you're going to walk in and, you're just going to get sold a lot of flour. It's not the experience of, let me walk into a grocery store or a liquor store and I get to pick that bottle of wine and I feel really good about it. So I think, dedicated sections to beverage as the category grows is going to become important. Obviously, these refrigerated experiences, but the ability for consumers to really actually even just see the packaging and see the branding. To Jake's point about brands carrying the future of the category, most of these brands are behind the counter today in dispensaries, and consumers can't even, just really look at brands next to each other on the shelf. So there's a long road, I think, to dispensary experiences ahead.
Jake, could I ask you, is Cann carried in those cannabis lounges in California? Are you allowed to be carried there?
Yeah, we're allowed to be carried there. The lounges are interesting for a number of reasons. One, obviously, there were a number of potential lounges in the works in advance of the pandemic, and that derailed them for a few years. So we expect that over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, they'll start opening up in droves in California, but also in places like Nevada and Illinois as well. In the early days, everyone that won the particular license type that was available in West Hollywood, which allowed folks to consume both smokable products and ingestible products, those were the most popular and the most valuable ones. Interestingly, that has shifted now. I think that what people have started to realize is that they're really expensive to build something, an inside lounge that allows for the right filtration of smoke and smoking to happen inside. And there's still a lot of sort of consequences of that in the neighborhood and apprehension. And then the experience in the lounge is different. And what we're seeing now is the value is really moving towards those edibles only ones, which include beverage. There's different regulations. I think we're a little bit away from being able to sell this, in a keg on tap, for example. There's like compliance information and testing that needs to be tied to the specific product. But beverages really are the key to unlocking on-premise consumption, because you can't sell, a group of 5 friends a $20 tin of gummies and they all kind of sit around a table and take one and wait a few hours, right? Like that's not a good economic model for these lounges. But beverage is exactly what you want, especially microdose beverage, right? Where folks are going to drink 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, right? And they're paying for those each round. And so that's really, I think, the key piece to this. And there's some really smart concepts that I think we'll see launching in sort of the next few months.
Yeah, that sounds pretty exciting. So I'm wondering, as you guys look at your first time purchasers and what's working to drive people to try your products when they're available, front and center, what seems to be the most important for you? Is it a flavor on the label? Is it what the label looks like? Like, what are you finding kind of works for you guys?
Yeah, I can jump in. I would say, brand gets them first, right? You have to have a strong brand. And I think Cann's done an awesome job paving the way in this whole category. I think Happi is aimed more at the female consumer, and we're moving in a bit of a different direction. In addition to social occasions, we're also going to look at solo occasions and can talk a bit about that to kind of the more functional beverage side of the industry. So I think you've got to have a strong brand and packaging that grabs them right off the bat. But I think if you don't deliver on the product, like the flavor has to be awesome, the effect has to be what's promised, right? And that's what's going to keep that repeat purchase. That's what's going to keep them coming back.
Gotcha. If you want to expand quickly what you were saying about the direction you're going?
Yeah, so I worked in cannabis now for 4 years. I was at an MSO prior to founding Happi, and I heard even Kim Rivers talk about minor cannabinoids this morning. And what's interesting is There aren't many beverages, if any, at all, that have started to really play with minor cannabinoids. And yet the functional beverage space outside of cannabis is huge, right? You see all these formulations, not just with CBD, but with reishi mushrooms and all sorts of green tea extract and all sorts of different things. So we are really looking at, our female consumer as the core consumer for Happi. And many of the occasions in which she's using cannabis are not just social occasions, but we call them solo occasions. And those solo occasions are things like sleep, right? Sleep is huge in the cannabis category. There are things like, immunity and wellness and those kind of key areas, even beauty. And so it's really important for us to look at sort of the two sides of cannabis. One is, I think, where Cann, does an amazing job on these social occasions in the social tonic space, the alcohol replacement space. And the other is looking at solo occasions. So we will be coming out this summer. I think we've been pretty public about it, but excited to talk about it with you guys, with a sleep beverage, as well as kind of a more immunity-oriented wellness beverage, both of which will be formulated with minor cannabinoids. So Kim mentioned earlier, CBN, CBG is something that we're playing with. And I'm excited about that because I think that's going to expand the beverage category in a new area that it hasn't really gone yet. You see edibles there quite a bit, gummies in particular, but I think there's really a lot of room left for beverages to go in different directions.
You know what? An interesting point you make on sleep. I something I realized, a good friend of mine, I had no idea that he was taking X milligram of gummies every night to fall asleep. I'm like, holy cazola. I'm like, is that for real? It was like literally 3X the dose I take to have a good time. He's taking to get zonked out. But it got me thinking, and just this sleep is a real use for a lot of cannabis users. It's not for myself, but I obviously there's a huge market for that.
Huge. I mean, I got into the cannabis category from sleep personally. I was a medical patient in Illinois and took pharmaceuticals to sleep and had to get off of them. And that's actually how I got into the industry. And I'm an avid user of edibles for sleep. But what's fascinating is beverage hasn't quite gone there yet. And yet the number of people that want to drink tea before bed, or they want to sip, even people drink alcohol before bed, right? And that's to self-medicate so they can sleep. You sit and drink a scotch on the rocks so I can fall asleep, or I have my wine to wind down, right? And so again, we believe there is a market for these more solo-oriented occasions that beverage can deliver on, in addition to social, which again, I think is a huge, huge opportunity.
Now, I have a question for you, Jake. Are you 100% satisfied with the onset curve and the length of the high you're getting with your current infusion technology? Or do you feel like improvements need to be made to really nail it in to close to how alcohol functions?
Yeah, sort of two questions there, right? I think the first on are we happy with it? We really are. We've spent a lot of time with a lot of emulsions going back 5 years. And the industry on the emulsion tech side has changed quite dramatically over those 5 years, as you can imagine. I think we're seeing really sophisticated science research and food science, that is endemic to cannabis in a way that it was definitely not 5 years ago. And so, over time, we've seen that technology improve. We've seen, onset improve pretty dramatically, but we also care about other things, right? We care about offset. We care about that. There's actually a real feeling in the consumer when they've kind of gotten past the most intense part of the effect. And so that's sort of similar to alcohol, right? You maybe drink a beer and then you wait 30 minutes and you're like, oh, wow, I feel fine. You have another one. That key to have another one is really important to us. And so we pay attention to that as well. I think the second question, which is, how does that compare to alcohol? And how do you think about, getting to a point? Alcohol is really special in lots of ways and what it does in the body, right? And particularly, I think there's psychosomatic elements to this, and then there's pharmacological elements. So from the first sip of alcohol, your cortisol is being lowered. That is not because of the alcohol, right? That's because of an association that you've developed in your brain. And so I think we can get there with cannabis. There's no reason we can't. We just don't have that sort of that history around it. And there may be some specific things about alcohol and that the actual compound that's going to lend itself to a quicker feeling. And we may not want, as a cannabis industry, to really, really push onset. It'll be interesting to see, right? If we're fighting for a fully legalized world, like we probably don't want nano-emulsification in our products because the FDA is not going to allow it, right? And so there's trade-offs there for sure. I think we're really happy with onset that's around 10 minutes. I think that's sufficient, right? The key is that folks start feeling the effects fairly quickly. That paired with a psychosomatic sort of experience that will develop over time from consuming our product and knowing where that effect leads. I think the combination of those two things makes it really competitive with alcohol, but alcohol will always be unique. They're not exactly the same. We try to get it as close as possible, but there will always be a little bit of a difference.
Now, man, we're just scratching the surface here with beverages. It's been so much fun to talk with you guys. Maybe before we wrap up, do you each want to just say where, if people are watching, where can they get your products and where are you going to be in then say the next 12 months if you're expanding? Great. Start with Lisa.
Sure. We are available right now in Michigan. We will be expanding this summer and expanding, as I mentioned, some more kind of functional beverage SKUs. We have an East Coast market. It's actually going to be the state of Maine that we are announcing in the next couple of weeks. And
My
then
brother's from there. I'll tell them.
Awesome. And hope maybe you'll be up near, I mean, Martha's Vineyard's not too far, right? So maybe you'll be up there this summer. But yeah, we're really excited about the Northeast and the Midwest. So our footprint will continue to expand to other adult use states in both the Midwest and the Northeast.
Great. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, we're available in a range of dispensaries across the states of California, Arizona, Nevada, Illinois, Massachusetts in the US, and then also Ontario and British Columbia in Canada. The best way is to go to drinkcann.com and you put in your zip code and find the nearest dispensary. Also for California folks, we deliver and you can find that on the website as well.
Amazing, man.
And I should mention, guys, happyhourdrink.com. You can find the dispensaries that carry us and also go to our Instagram as well.
Happy with an I.
Happy with an I. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Awesome. It was great to talk to you guys. Thank you for stopping by. Lisa Hurwitz of Happi and Jake Bullock of Cann. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you both.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right. Don't go anywhere, everyone. Quick break. And then we got another killer panel coming up on the future products in cannabis.
All right, welcome back to Grizzle Cannabis Con. Scott, we got a good one here.
Oh, we got another great panel. These are two guys who have been in the industry a long time. They've been pioneers and they continue to be pioneers. So we're excited to talk to them about products, what's coming next, what are they excited about. We got Colin Landforce. He's CTO of Unrivaled Brands. And then we got Gord Nichol. He's founder of North 40 Cannabis. So thank you both for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to be here. Thanks, guys.
Guys, thank you. So, just start with a first question for both of you guys. Just your histories in the industry. I think you guys both bring a ton of just OG knowledge, can do, and ultimately it's a reflection on your products. Colin, you want to start, and then Gord, you pick up after.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a longtime serial entrepreneur. I've been in and out of the medical world of cannabis for 15 plus years, and then been operating in recreational in Oregon and California since day zero of both of those rec markets. So fast forward through a couple of rounds of M&A, I'm now CTO of Unrivaled, like you mentioned, where I work a lot on our consumer experience and the product world, which is something I've been doing the entire time I've been in cannabis.
All right. For me, I've just been a cannabis consumer for well over 40 years now. Grew my first crop in 1989. Did a lot of brokering on the pre-legalization days, and we joined Canada's regulated industry in 2019. We're a small micro cultivation facility up here in northeastern Saskatchewan.
Great, thank you,
Gord. I was 3 when you harvested your first.
Look at how far the industry's come. The young blood.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, guys, this is a great panel of guys. Like, I deeply respect it. Obviously, I know Colin off Twitter. Scott and I both interact with Colin. Gord, I'm intimately familiar with your product. I'm a super fan of North 40. You brought goodness into my life, so that's why you're here.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, we're really fortunate to have the position we're in, and I grow things that I want to consume, and that's translated pretty well out there in the market.
100%.
So, I mean, you guys are both in a position where you're pretty much pushing the legal industry forward. So can you tell us about, say, the most exciting product for you? Is it still flower, or the delivery method as well? Because Colin, I know you're looking on the tech side and delivery. Maybe start with Colin, and then Gord can weigh in and on products.
Sure. So first of all, I'm long flower. I'm a big flower guy, particularly pre-rolls, which I think are the underappreciated SKU in the cannabis space. But in general, with products, I'm really bullish on full spectrum and then minor cannabinoids, right? So I think that especially as you have these open recreational markets, whether it's Canada or certain states in the United States, and you saw the absolute flood of biomass into the market, it really changed the landscape for every product input, right? Distillate will always have a place in certain products, but I think especially on the edible front, you see distillate-based edibles more or less go to the wayside. And I think that some of the full spectrum edibles, Lost Farms, live resin gummies, one of my favorite SKUs on the market. You get this combination of obviously the fruit flavors, along with the realization that cannabis kind of tastes good if you eat it in the right context and with the right flavor profiles. And I think SKUs like that are absolutely the future. They're obviously much more craft leaning than a distillate based gummy that you can make a million of that'll be exactly the same every time. But I love that space. And I think minor cannabinoids are a huge part of the future. But it's probably a ways out until you really get in the weeds. That was not an intentional pun on the THCVs and all the interesting stuff going on.
I don't know if you heard the last panel, they're rolling out a drink that's going to have some of that stuff, but it seems like they're on the forefront. So yeah, it is taking some time.
Yeah, for us, it's all about of course, we're trapped in this high THC dominated market. So we have to stay up there, but I am trying to swing the market a little bit more to follow the grower type thing, because we have some extraordinary cultivars that get cast a little bit to the wayside just simply because they're, you know, a high or sorry, a mid or low 20% THC. But we're trying to educate people here. We're trying to use our clout, I guess it would be, maybe my reputation a little bit, to introduce people to some of the what we would call you know, upper mid-grade products that are being left behind. I've kind of trying to bring some flavors back that are being lost and shuffled out. So it's kind of what we're doing right now. Of course, pre-rolls are a big thing now. We're really trying to hammer out some really nice premium pre-rolls. Nothing from the bottom of the bag, you know, all the top end flowers getting into them. We're doing pretty well with that. And
Is that available in Ontario right now, Gord?
right now, the only thing that we got going into Ontario, and we're kind of excited about it, is our hash rosin infused almond brittle.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah. I've got it. Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's I was in Ontario there in Toronto, and I brought a bunch of samples with me and shared them with people, and like the response is phenomenal. It's truly a great product. So we're really excited to be rolling that out.
So Gord, it sounds like education is an important aspect to get consumers to appreciate this, not just the number, the THC number on the label.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I'm not the guy to say it's all about the terpenes, because nobody's smoking cannabis just for the terpenes. Not that I know of anyhow. We still want to maintain a good effect from the product and maintain a high level of THC, but it can't be the only driver of products. I think there's too much to be lost if that's what happens.
Now, I have a question that may be interesting, because you guys are kind of in two different markets, very different regulatory wise. So this will be interesting. Is there one thing you can think of that the industry is really dropping the ball on with the consumer right now that they could do better?
Well, for Canada, it's got to be the 10 milligram limit on edibles.
Oh.
Like, I mean, that one's crazy. You know, childproof packaging on flour. Like, I'm not sure what they're afraid the toddlers are going to do.
These are strong toddlers out there.
I started young, but I still couldn't roll a joint till I was at least a teenager. So
right, yeah. That's almost its own self-limiting thing, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah.
What about you, Colin?
That's a big one. That's a big one for me. I think I always I lose a little bit of sleep thinking about the amount of packaging that a company like any of ours puts into the world. Just on a daily basis, because you know, plastics are the bane of Mother Earth's existence, right? And when you bring into account things like these dosage limits that Gord mentions in Canada, and child resistance on pre-rolls and flour,
yep,
that I think we could agree are pretty innocuous for kids to get in their hands, that just makes it exponentially worse than it needs to be. And I think there's a place for all those things big time. I have a 3-year-old, and I hate the idea of her getting, you know, a gummy or a tincture in her hands. Those things absolutely need to be, but a lot of these SKUs and then related rules like dosage are really making it a lot worse than it needs to be. And it's especially bizarre for a industry that, of course, is fairly conscious of usage of plastics and so on and so forth, to be such a big contributor to that.
Yeah, very true. So are there any, I got to talk to you guys about trends, because you do see a lot out there. Are there any important trends you're seeing from the consumer you think investors should be aware of? Like, how are they buying? What products do they like? Is anything changing really, or is it kind of in status quo lately?
And maybe a question specific for Gord in Canada. Obviously, you know, we have a unique landscape here where it was, you know, just given the amount of capital that came into the industry that should, you know, backing poor product, the consumer experience. Are you noticing that evolution change, just given that, you know, a lot of you know, we've kind of worked through some of the awful biomass and growers that should have never been growing? I don't know, just bigger picture, just trying to think, are we getting to a more evolved place?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I came, my first products came into the market in 2019 and barely over 20. And it was, that was almost unheard of at the time. And now you can't sell 20% product in Canada. A lot of the bigger growers are getting better. There's new players coming on board with some of these hybrid greenhouse technologies that are doing really good. And the small craft growers are taking market share away from some of the bigger, less capable producers out there. We're seeing that as a going trend. So that's encouraging in some ways. So, yeah.
What about you, Colin? What are you seeing?
Well, I think tacking onto that, I think the microbrew category of products, right? I mentioned alcohol there, but really that entire category across the board is taking the world by storm right now. It has been for a few years, and I think cannabis is the perfect vector for that to continue. So I think that lends itself to not the mega factories growing mid indoor, and it lends itself much more to smaller batch specific products like the full spectrum stuff I mentioned, like the hash rosin brittle that Gord mentioned, and all the things that are in that vein. In terms of
Colin, just a follow-on question to that is the idea that ultimately, if we get this bifurcation of the market where you're like, listen, I don't want biomass or mids, and so that idea is you're just going to get a better margin profile, getting to this place where people, appreciate craft, much like microbrews, et cetera, right?
Well, I think that someone recently described to me as an hourglass shaped market, right? So there's a lot of business to be done at the top and a lot of business to be done at the bottom, and almost nothing in the middle. And so when you go to the bottom of that spectrum, it's people that are growing amazing outdoor, right? The bottom, the cheap stuff is like really, really excellent sun grown, right? And especially that's very prominent. And we have Southern Oregon and Northern California, which is like, objectively like best climate in the world to grow sun grown cannabis, right? And so in doing that, there's not much share to be had there for just like okay indoor, right? It's kind of the worst of both worlds. And I think in a lot of consumer goods spaces, the middle there is really never where you want to be in general.
Yeah, great. Well said.
Very interesting. So maybe this is one for Gord. Can the average consumer really tell quality, or do they still it sounds like you answered the question earlier. Are they just judging quality by the THC, or is that changing, do you think?
I think it's starting to change. Here, I can speak pretty well to the Saskatchewan market, where most of my business is done. And we are seeing customers educate themselves about packaging dates, stuff like that. I mean, we do on-demand packaging for all of our retail outlets. So we're getting product into the hands of consumers within days of packaging, coming straight out of the cure containers. We're finding that that's resonating with consumers, and they're starting now. We're hearing a lot more feedback where bud tenders are telling us that because of what we're doing, a lot more people are educating themselves, and they were wondering why, when they open up a bag of our product, it's the nose is there and the freshness is there, as opposed to something they might have bought off the shelf last week that was packaged months ago. So in that respect, I feel that the consumers are getting more educated, and along with that, they're now starting to tune into a little bit more about what the growers are doing and the curing processes and stuff like that, and the difference that it can make in the end products.
Colin, when you hear Gord, does that sound like your Western markets like a while ago, or is it very different in like how you've seen the consumer change over time?
Well, I think that in a lot of ways, it's interesting. The guardrails are the same. So many of the details and the rules are so different. In general, I think that, Canada has been at it for a while, which I would imagine that I'm not familiar with the Canadian market, but I would imagine that in the micro, there's a lot of very similar things going on. He mentioned the hash rosin brittle, like that lines up exactly with what I was just saying about full spectrum edibles and like a move away from these distillate based CPGs. And I think like one of the most bizarre parts of what what we all do is that, can't all these different markets have the same guardrails, like don't sell to kids, right? But then all of the minutia is so different and so varying that it really doesn't do the consumer any favors at the end of the day. Like, and it creates a ton of confusion. It doesn't set brands up well to scale across borders. It's really a disservice to everybody's efforts, how fragmented all that is.
Yeah, so standardization still has to come, but that will help the industry overall.
I think in a huge way. And I think what matters is it'll help consumers, right? Like it will significantly improve the consumer experience, which is the key to mass adoption, which we're not even close to. And a lot of walls, metaphorical and literal, need to fall before we get there.
All right,
guys, so this was a fantastic segment. Obviously, lots. Look forward to having you guys back on. Ton of insight here for OG smokers and folks new to cannabis. Guys, follow these guys. They're on Twitter.
Unrivaled Brands, North 40. Wish you guys best of luck. I know you guys are crushing it on your own, but it was great to catch up with you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. We got the piece de resistance, Mr. Mitch Baruchowitz from Merida. If you don't know Merida, I think potentially maybe the largest cannabis PE firm in North America. So they're seeing everything that's going on. You don't want to miss this.
Cannabis Con, man. Woo!
The train keeps on rolling.
Guys, we've taken this train from 10 a.m. all the way through to our final and most important speaker, Mitch. Guys, give it up for Merida Capital, man. Wonderful, man. Always good. Listen, I tweeted something out. You shot like perfect shot. That was incredible.
Incredible. So this is why you tune into Cannabis Con, guys. We had Mitch on in November, a long time ago. He said, you got to watch for this reimbursement, medical reimbursement. Boom. What did we get last week? Medical reimbursement in New York. So as we said, Mitch is watching a lot of things. And so it's always great to bring him on. So good to see you, Mitch.
Yeah, well, guys, first of all, thanks for having me. You guys have been such amazing people bringing such interesting ideas into the sort of cannabis lexicon. And also, I think people get very hung up on stocks and they don't always focus on thematic ideas that are going to, push the next 20 years of investment. And everyone's thinking in cycles of quarter to quarter. And, it's great that Kim and Jason kind of talk from the public perspective. I know you guys didn't get Verano, but I think it's amazing that when you hear Kim and Jason speak, and I'm sure if you had the CEOs of a lot of the MSOs, whether it's GTI or Verano or Curaleaf, what you'd hear is there's a lot happening. I did want to point out one thing, just one piece of feedback. I agree with a lot of what Jason and Kim said. I do think, and Colin just said something too, which is we sometimes get hung up on consumer adoption. Consumer adoption is here. Legal consumer adoption is still growing at a rapid rate. Legal consumer adoption isn't here yet. But from a consumer adoption perspective, cannabis is still the most unregulated from a federal perspective in the world, the most consumed product in the world that is currently unregulated. So consumer adoption itself isn't an issue. It's legal consumer adoption. I think that's a really important fine detail that sometimes we miss. It's, when Kim talks about consumer data, obviously I'm a heavy investor in data elements. That's one of the reasons why I can predict things when it comes to regulations, kind of getting a sense of what is happening, not just, on the ground, but really what's the mindset of the regulators looking at what's happening on the ground? What's the mindset of whether it's uplisting? I mean, we dig deeper because we have a bigger team, and with a bigger team, you can take a deep breath and start to explore things that sometimes companies you can't explore if you're just hopping from sort of fire drill to fire drill. So we're built to consume this information, and that allows us to sort of penetrate deeper. So one thing that that I think Kim's absolutely right about, there's a tremendous amount of consumer data, but the consumer data from just the usage at her point of sale systems isn't just the data that's going to drive the industry forward. It's what is the consumer data that's happening from people who are still consuming illegally? What is the data around other specialty consumables and how we can extrapolate insights from that? And so there's a lot that's happening with respect to the consumer, but I do agree with her. They are, Trulieve is great at paying deep attention to what's happening. I've always, if you go back to, I think it was Benzinga 2018 or 19, probably 18, Kim and I did a fireside, we did this little interview session, and she always was talking about why they do delivery and how they do delivery. And, I walked away thinking, she's paying attention to what's going on. Like she's not just, spraying and praying. I
love that line, like, spraying and praying.
She is deeply paying attention to what people want in Florida. So.
Yeah, and that's that's something the industry just that spraying and praying, that it just is coming back to. We actually brought that up with Kim, just that aspect of just how much money's been thrown at this industry. We Scott and I were ringside watching the lunacy in Canada, right? Like early days, right there. Yeah. There's LPs that should have no business even getting the capital to buy the spray gun, right?
Right.
But so a lot of ways, where we sit right now is it feels like it's a far better place to what you're saying, that view of like, get your head out of this whole day to day. What's MSOS doing like this minute? What's it going to close?
It matters, but it's also for me, I mean, we come from an entrepreneurial background. We were operators in the space. Yes, we're a fund. And clearly, I mean, we have a huge public book too, from selling, I don't know, I think we sold 6 companies at over $100 million to large companies in the space. So it matters to us. But I think it's really important that think of where we came from just 16, 17, when Canadian cannabis went legal. No one was talking about, minor cannabinoids and genetics and the medicalization and the potential for American, at least, reimbursement. You had like this legacy of Californian pioneering and Colorado pioneering and Washington pioneering and Oregon pioneering. And then you had this like East Coast illegality. And it was really illegal here, right? It was, and people sort of, and that's why I think a lot of the operators who have these limited licenses are going to do better over time, because they understand what it's like to transition people whose mindset is this, there's a stigma around the illegality. Right. And California didn't have that. I mean, you could get brownies on, Venice Beach when in 2005, it wasn't like a hard thing. So the illegality components that still drive like the East Coast markets, like New York, everyone keeps projecting the numbers for New York's legality. They have no idea how big it's going to be, because the reality is New York, remember, there's still stigma attached. So you don't really understand the consumer till you have a legal market access. And when you do that, then you see, what the numbers really are. And I think New York's going to wildly exceed most people's estimates because of that. It's not like California going legal. It's not like other places going legal. This is a place where delivery is already rampant. There's probably 5 to 6 billion of illegal consumption. And I think New York's going to cannibalize that pretty quickly.
And could you maybe just walk us through how that happens? Because a lot of people are, the view is the traditional, well, I'm going to stay with my, my dealer. He's taking care of me, X, Y, Z,
and those dispensaries, all the illegal dispensaries that are in the news, in like New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that are those kind of a problem for now and then they end up going away, or is it like an actual issue?
Yeah, I mean, just like with Michigan and some other states, depending on the state, I think you do get these hiccups that seem to be like the big news story, but then just kind of migrate into the fold. First of all, the Cannabis Commission of New York, I think, is doing a pretty good job of taking a very, very hard line against that. Number one, they're not going to tolerate the Delta 8 and CBD trucks. Like it works for now because the infrastructure is focused mainly on building a program, but they're not going to be California. There's nothing close to what's going to happen from a look the other way and let this gray market. That is not going to be a function. I mean, they are dead serious about making sure they get the tax dollars from it and that everything is legal. But I do think it shows the entrepreneurialism in New York. It shows how New York is. New York's going to push if the level's here, New York's going to push the boundary, right? And I think, which is why I think New York's going to be an enormous market, from consumption lounges to a vast, other business, whether it's creating form factors that help dense urban environments, so that flower, like with what Colin said, and Gord and Kim and Jason, people love flower. Flower is the most predictable form. But one thing we're learning, and this is really important, I just got this insight over the last 6 to 8 weeks from New Frontier data and some validation around it, and we're writing about it. So I don't want to flesh it out too deeply, because I really
please do. That's why Grizzle Cons exist.
I know, but here's what's so interesting about what you said before, Thomas, which I think a lot of people think. I'm going to stick with my dealer. Now, remember, we've gone through this before on some of the other Grizzle stuff, but if anyone's a viewer, the first and foremost is a lot of the people stay in the illegal market in Canada because the best growers stay in the illegal market.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. We know in the United States, it's a lot different. A lot of great growers are still growing illegally in places, but in outdoor, primarily, not a lot of large scale illegal indoor anymore. It just doesn't make economic sense. And so you get outdoor. People want the stronger cannabis that typically is indoor. And so what one thing that we know about the consumer now, and why I disagree that people will stay with their dealers in New York, is because of variety. When people, I think it's something like 70%, and that's why I'm saying I don't have the data. We're still regressing it to clean it, but it looks like 70% of the people who walk in a dispensary buy at least one item that they didn't plan on buying when they walked in. Okay. Right. So the exploratory nature of the cannabis consumer, whether legal or illegal, right? Clearly some of that could be driven by someone walking in for the first time and not having a clue what they want to buy. But, and that's why you have to clean the data and see how many times people have been in. But anyone who's been in a MedMen, anyone, you walk around, you go, you know what, I'm going to try one of these, because I think what a lot of the people said today, and I think people say it generally, is we know about the consumer, they want a consistent experience. That's true. However, they may want a consistent experience with what they know they're consuming, but there is no doubt that people walk into a dispensary and say, I'm going to try this once. They're looking for new feelings. And because the remarkable part about the plant is consumption hits everyone a little different. And consumption also, if there are people that go to Jamaica and think Jamaican cannabis is the greatest, and the terpenes and the adaptogens in the plant make it a good product. But the truth is, I know a lot of people that don't think Jamaican cannabis is very good. They think it's very weak. They bring cannabis with them to Jamaica when they vacation because Jamaicans want to find that they call it meditation. They want to find that buzz.
Yeah.
But when people here want to consume, they're consuming for a variety of reasons, but a lot of it is to get high, right? They want to find, they want to go over the edge, whereas Jamaicans want to find that mellow. But
in Jamaica, there's no problem with seeds, man. It's all, it's like whatever.
You got to have a de-seeder if you want to, and also the guy who gives you like a wet, half pound that you got to dry out, and it's not even dry by the time you get off of vacation, like you've been hairballing it for the last week. But, aside from that. But all kidding aside, it's very interesting to find the itinerant nature of the cannabis consumer. So when you think of brand exploration or brand loyalty, the loyalty could be to, let's just use Trulieve because Kim was the one speaking about it. They may want a Trulieve product, but they're going to try different Trulieve strains because of that genetic sampling, which is why we're heavily investing in genetics. You can see clearly that the world is going to, whether it's minor cannabinoids, whether it's new adaptogens or cannabinoids that are being discovered, whether it's THCV, which we know is an appetite suppressant. So like a company like Her Highness may want it because women who are consuming don't want to get the munchies. So there's a lot of things happening, but it's not necessarily just about brand loyalty. They may be like, Trulieve's going to make good products, whatever they do, and I'm going to try that. But it's clearly that the cannabis consumer, and you don't get this when you get the delivery illegal experience. You don't get to walk into a store and try 50 different things.
Yeah,
and
there's no discovery, right?
Yeah.
And I think the discovery process of cannabis is something I know. Look, I personally have been really, really studying it for the last probably 8 months because it just pops up in all the data that we get. You can see this little element of exploratory. For instance, think of how different it is in traditional industries. You walk into a supermarket, you're there, you're going to get one peanut butter that you use. You're not trying 3 different peanut butters. You're not going to buy a new peanut butter because you may try a new bag of chips or something small. But when it comes to cannabis, the ability of a cannabis dispensary to sell cannabis consumers on a new product is much higher than a ShopRite or an Aldi or one of the big supermarket brands. And I think because of that, it's important that your brand be consistent, but that you continue to introduce new iterations. And that's why, again, genetics for us, heavy investments in genetics, heavy investments in ad tech and data to understand where the consumer is, to look at what the consumer, if you know that every consumer that walks into a dispensary is also Googling like best strains for medical, for cancer appetite, that's good news. That's good things. That's good to know. If you're trying to reach consumers, that's good to know. So I agree with Kim that that data matters, but I would argue that 95% of the cannabis companies, if not more, are going to use a company like New Frontier or Media Gel in our portfolio for that data because they're not data science companies, right? Trulieve may be good at our consumers are saying this to us and we're very responsive, and they might do deep dives on data. But are they doing data regressions to figure out what people are looking at on their phones when they're in Trulieve dispensaries? Maybe they are, but I tend to think that there's going to be professional companies that do it better. So when Merida is looking at the future of cannabis, we're looking at those searches. Leafly, one of the reasons when we de-SPAC'd Leafly, and obviously you had Yoko on before, it's so interesting to understand what Leafly knows about the consumer.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
It's so deep and so rich and textured. It going back to, one of Merida's first investments in New Frontier back to 2016, which is eventually when the space normalizes, data actually matters. That's the differentiator, is what do you know about people? And I think a lot of people are focused on what people are doing at the stores today, but you can also, just like our piece on heavy consumers coming to the market, from 6 or 7 months ago. That piece explored what does it mean when the guy who's smoking $400 to $500 of cannabis a month and he wants to get bang for his buck. That's the mid guy that Colin was talking about. That's the low end. That guy wants strong, cheap cannabis. Meanwhile, the new consumer might want a beverage so I find the newer product categories are really around the newer consumer, which is still coming in pretty quickly, but that the transitioning consumer from the illicit market is a consumer that they're not studying enough about the illegal market to understand what they want when they hit the legal market.
Yeah. So what's the big carrot? Is it going after, because, there's way less than 50% of people like use cannabis regularly. So is the nugget going after those consumers through drinks, or is it going after the heavy users and converting them from the legal market? Or
yeah, well, the heavy users are coming in because the heavy users, first of all, are very interested in finding phase. Something we went back to Thomas's original thing, I think we said when I first did, maybe a year and a half ago by now, which is finding something that brings a different element to what they're already experiencing.
Yeah.
Right? Cannabis can be wonderful, but if you smoke the same thing every day, you'd have to stop in a way to reset your cannabinoid system.
Yeah, and we discussed that. That was
right.
one of
We
the
discussed
first
at length, and in
cannabis cons,
fact, there's a study going on right now where someone is studying how you can reset that cannabinoid system quicker. Whether there's a molecule or something where, think about if you could take a pill where every time you smoke, it's like the first time you smoke. That would be incredible, right? Every guy who has smoked, an eighth a day like Thomas is going to buy that. But,
you know what? For me too, like I'm just at that point right now. I'm just like, I don't even, that point of what's the point? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I know that's what a lot of smokers have that issue, right? And now. Edibles actually are kind of like, oh, that's fantastic. Like that's something, but
habitual use versus like fully conscious voluntary use. Like the person using it on a Friday and a Saturday to essentially enhance their social life is not the habitual user that's waking and baking and using it as a modulator. Like it's by usage. I don't think one's more virtuous than the other. It's just that the experience is different and the consumer is really different. And, our job, I think, to find the best investments is to really dig deep into the ecosystem to understand that difference. And I think there is a lot of noise, but there's plenty of signal that you can now extrapolate. So, Scott, to your question, converting the heavy user out of the illegal market is hard initially because that consumer they want things convenient. But as the experience replicates in the legal market, whether it's delivery, curbside, the fact that the legal market has plenty of cheap bottom shelf cannabis that these guys can get now, that's probably of similar quality to what they're consuming outdoor. And the fact that they can walk in and buy something new that might give them a new experience, sort of regenerate their excitement, rather than like.
Well, exactly to your point, when I discovered Gord's Alive Rosin, like, it was mind blowing, like, in terms of and I don't think I would have found that, definitely wouldn't have found that in the legal market. Now, obviously I would have had to know Gord in Saskatchewan,
right,
in the legacy market, but that wasn't going to be something that would have ever happened. Right. And so instead I was getting, you just get what was available. Maybe it was good.
Yeah, no, that's what the illicit market is. And also, let's be clear. The illicit market at this point isn't just it's illegal cannabis or unregulated cannabis, but a lot of it is similar, like, to the mid or low end that's going on the shelves in California or other places, because it's being grown in California particularly. There are a lot of legal growers, from what I understand, and there's some data that proves that a lot of legal growers are diverting their own products. And I'm not saying it's everyone, and I'm not saying I don't know what percentage it is, but there is a huge loophole in the California regulatory regime that kind of makes it almost impossible to discourage at this point. And I know that there are people working on closing that loophole, but just to make the point, and Colin,
that just like there's no net, like, I'm growing this, but I don't have to account for where it kind of goes at the end?
That's the loophole. It's kind of like everything is the same, and then half of that room ends up in New York. But Jake from Cann said something really interesting, which I think is completely true. And it's something we're exploring very, very heavily, which is this feeling of when someone consumes cannabis, there's this anticipatory decrease in whether it's cortisol or increase in oxytocin or serotonin or dopamine before you even get to the anandamide interaction with cannabis. Anandamide being the way that the original endocannabinoid system was discovered is the presence of an enzyme that interacted with, for some reason, THC and CBD in a pretty profound way. And that's how the receptors were discovered, is where was this anandamide sitting in the body? And so when you think of someone, like they take, I will agree that the consistency of like a drink or something that you may consume less frequently is very important, because someone might only consume that once every couple of weeks, and they start to take those first sips, and the biochemical effects of the anticipation of the high coming. So that when there's that intense moment of, when you go fight or flight, like, am I gonna be too high or am I gonna be just right? I think the consistent experience allows you to transition into that feeling. And that's a very important part of the beverages. We've done a fair amount of discussions with beverages, when I say we, I mean the portfolio companies, and beverage consumers are very concerned of overconsumption. And, because like you're drinking it and the next, it's not like vodka where, after the first drink, second drink, you could get, if you drink 100, if you miss the 0 and you drink 100 instead of 10, it's going to be a rough ride.
And that's always been the challenge with gummies, right? You never want to be the dude in a puddle. Like that's like, and
that's why the illegal market doesn't do edibles a lot. They do it, but it's basically spray on THC on gummies and stuff. And it's different than microdosed and the kind of things that you're now seeing in the market, which are so precision dosed that your experience can be one of just mellow, unwind, all the way through to, hey, I'm going to, like this weekend, the Governor's Ball, and I want to be rocking for 6 hours. And I think that experience, because of the mindset around the cannabis consumer, which is, that's why people love flower. Flower, there can't be that many unexpected, bends in the road in flower. You smoke it, you kind of know where you're at 10 or 15 minutes later. You don't expect the second surge 2.5 hours later, all of a sudden you can't see straight. There's no chance of that. Whereas edibles is more of a wave, and so is beverages. And I think that's all about absorption curve and stuff. And when you asked, that was a wonderful question to Jake and Lisa about the absorption and are they happy? We are a big investor in Source, which is a beverage technology company that powers those beverages. And that comes down to solubility. And I think when you give really good idea people, like the two people you had on there around beverages, the tools, they're going to make products people like. They're going to make products that people love. And so, if you guys want, I kind of made a list of like, here's the 4 things I think, or 5 things that people need to focus on over the next year in cannabis.
Sure. Yeah.
This is great, guys. 5 things from Mitch to you that focus on. We take notes.
Okay. So first and foremost, I think data is not just, and everyone uses data, in terms of like, they use the words, it's a buzzword. It's, I'm sure the guy from WeWorks used to pitch data from what we're getting in the companies that are, everyone uses data. Data is that, magical thing. And there are companies, obviously, that make a lot of money in data, IBM and the like, multi-billion dollar companies use data in a sophisticated way. In fact, BlackRock reportedly is the biggest buyer of consumer data in the world, because they basically want to know how much foot traffic is in the stores before earnings and whatever. So it's not just about driving consumer insights. It's about advertising technology isn't there yet. So, advertising can be a negative or it can be a virtue. If it shows you things you want that are relevant to what you're buying and may want to buy, very virtuous, but we don't have that in cannabis yet. So you're losing the ability to really drive consumers who, the consumer discovery process, much like Napster or music in the, iTunes benefited from Napster because people were like going through other people's libraries and be like, I think I might like that music. This guy's got all this great music. What's this band? You remember, back in the day, people who are younger than internet, we used to be able to go into other people's hard drives through Napster. Like it showed you a guy's hard drive and what music was on it. So the discovery process is important to consumer adoption. And the discovery process in cannabis right now is extremely opaque. So I think with discovery, right now, the discovery process, go into a dispensary and see what's on the shelf. Or go to Leafly, or go to a few other sites that are working on, let's call it democratic votes on what something might or might not be. So that's one thing. So as ad tech increases, you're going to see discovery increase. And with discovery comes passion and excitement. So that's both for new consumers and existing consumers. Again, Scott, driving that legacy Joe six-pack smoker into the legal market, because that discovery process is better in the legal market. Very little discovery in the illegal market. It's like when you used to get Cracker Jacks. You know, the illegal market's a little like Cracker Jacks. You open up the box, hopefully there's a really cool toy you want to use. If you get the tattoos, you give it to Thomas. No one wants the tattoos you get in a Cracker Jack box, right? You want the little thing, the bang snaps you can throw at someone's head. So that's one thing. So data is going to unlock a lot. Number two, genetics. People said it, a lot of people talk about it today. So here's the four things I think genetics. You have different highs and different feelings. You have the consistent replication for the people who want that, you know, who are doing it for more of that anticipatory, like I need to unwind. This is my way of doing that. So you want that consistent. It's just like, you don't even care if you get high. You want that feeling of relaxation, which is what you get when you've been consuming for years and years and years and years, because your body will anticipatorily send out the dopamine and the serotonin. That's the pacifier usage, right? Then you have the minor cannabinoids, which everyone's spoken about at length. I'm not going to go into. But then most important on the genetic side is the ability for growers to focus on the idea process and leave the genetics to companies who are better at creating seed genetics. So I think you're going to see a lot more specialization in seed genetics. And you'll see companies like a Trulieve using outside providers who are going to arm those people. And obviously, I'm a heavy investor in the arms merchant on that side, because I do think that you unless you're going to run a massive lab, like people want the MSOs focused on the consumer and leave the lab and heavy scientific elements to people who want to do that for a living, so that you don't end up risking all this capital in producing, you know, it's like buy new Coke or try to build it. Well, new Coke, you know, Coke spent $2 billion building new Coke. Within a year, they bought Glacial, right? For vitamin water. Much easier to buy something that you already know the adoption. So I think you're going to find.
That's a great analog.
Yeah, so specialization is what you're talking about.
Specialization of what powers the MSO brand, like Kim said, the house of brands, like Jason said, the house of brands, the ability. Kim's got a lot of eyeballs and a lot of shelf space. Let someone else power all that work it takes to fill that with the best things. And I think at times you want that because it's a lower capital risk. It's worth it to spend money on that rather than do it in-house where you have to take all the risk. Then medicalization, as you guys know, New York, the reimbursement law that was passed in New York, it's a 2-page law, easy to read. It just modifies. It basically says cannabis will now be considered a prescription drug for these 4 public programs. It's not going to go into effect in New York till April 1st of 2023. So the vote in that they need. But as you guys know, last time, the reason I predicted that is because New Jersey had laws come out of it's the Judiciary Committee. So Jersey, I thought was going to move quicker. But the other thing I was seeing is that workers' comp are payors. They're not just reimbursers. And because of all the lawsuits around workers' comp, I thought that there would be a workers' comp insurance law, and Jersey happens to be a leader in that. The other thing I've heard anecdotally from a bunch of insurance executives is that they are quietly already reimbursing people for, you know, certain injuries in workers' comp. They're just not talking about it. They're not publicizing it, but there is a lot of quiet reimbursement happening. And when that happens, they're already soft to it. So they just don't want lawsuits, right? They want to avoid being the one like when, you know, the workers' comp insurer was in the Hager case in Jersey. So I think you're going to see medicalization and insurance reimbursement and the entire medical vertical change shape over the next year. You know, and my prediction there is the biggest place it's going to change shape is you're going to see established medical providers like maybe like a Sloan Kettering saying, we want specific products for people getting chemo that can help them with their appetite, that people are going to start looking at cannabis much more seriously because of New York has now kind of given its imprimatur. Now, I am desperately trying to get the legislative dicta for how New York came to the conclusions it came to. Right now, I haven't been able to get it yet. I'm working on that. I want to read what was the medical inputs that they used to make such a significant step. Okay, 4th thing, industrial hemp. If you're not watching, Colin talked about the packaging, even, you know, the individualization of cannabis packaging and differentiation is great. The childproofing is literally filling up landfills at this point.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I think we got to get smarter on that. And I think, you know, just like the way water bottles change, I think cannabis rules have to be changed, not necessarily loosened, but you have to think about cannabis packaging differently. It's very wasteful, and it's really wasteful because of the regulations. So, and by the way, you know, you can't open half the package. I have problems.
Oh yeah.
So I don't really understand that. So I think there's a revolution coming in packaging, which is
Does that
going
apply
to
to
help
construction
adopt.
as well?
Oh, well,
about
you know,
hemp?
I'm just talking about hemp from a bioplastics and biomaterial.
Okay.
Yeah.
The amount of construction and the dislocation of a lot of the existing industrial materials is going to happen. We know that
Mhm.
commoditization is off the charts. Hemp is a much cheaper way to do concrete, well, hempcrete and other things. And we know hempcrete recently got a ISS global designation where it is a safe building material. That's going to drive adoption.
Do you know what I'm so curious about this hempcrete. It's almost like we need to do a special on this. Just
Hempcrete
you know,
could be-
I need to
it could
go
be its
out there.
own
We need to
hour.
see this. Yeah, you know what? Like, we actually need to have like a camera on the, you know, just to explain what this is.
It's amazing. It's, you know, people think of it like, I think of hemp, I think of CBD, but what you can get the CBD molecule out now while also preserving the bast and herd fibers, and because of that, the amount. That's why, and it's cheap. Hemp is cheap because it was overgrown over the last few years. So, you know, and by the way, it's one of the few Canadian industries that's really, you know, our investments in hemp processing have all been in Canada. So it's the one place where I'm really bullish in Canada, you know, because it's dry, it's cold up in the upper west, like Alberta area. So I think hemp and also think of Latin America when they pass their cannabis industries, they're very much about sustainability. So you're going to see hemp immediately sort of piggyback on that. And then China is currently buying, you know, processed hemp cotton from one of our portfolio companies, even though 60% of their 70% of the world's hemp is grown in China because of the processing, because of the cleanliness around it, because of the ESG elements. So that's it. And then the sort of fifth thing, or I think this is the fifth thing, is the laws. You know, we hear about safe banking. Steve Daines, a Montana senator, blood red state, was against the law. But now that the law is passed, he wants safe banking because the Montana Bankers Association wants clarity. With clarity comes adoption. With clarity comes progress. And I think people underestimate how much the uncertainty around these little elements of cannabis around the edges really do drive money flow, right? If you can make money in a lot of areas, yes, cannabis has tremendous growth, and we know that the consumer adoption from the illegal market to the legal market is going to drive huge gains, nearly to 100 billion by 2026-27, whereas most people were projecting a $20-30 billion industry. You know, if you look 3 years ago, look at the projections. Yeah. It's stratospherically different. But uncertainty, so laws, it's not just laws that change a state like North Carolina recently. No one's talking about that. North Carolina has 10 million people. They just passed the medical law. It'll make it it'll make it full. It'll get passed in the second house it needs by the end of the year. North Carolina's gonna have a program. Georgia's launching its program. You know, Kim talked about some of the new states. These are 10 million people. New York's, you know, rec hasn't even started yet. You're talking about massive illegal consumers who now will have legal access, because every medical program is a new consumption ecosystem. Yeah. So that also will give us a bigger picture of what the southern states look like. Mississippi, you know, alcohol was illegal on a state level there until 1968. You had to pass it at your local level to be able to do alcohol. It was illegal from a state. And then the state started saying you can pass it at the county level, but the state itself does not have a official, you know, perspective on alcohol. Mississippi is moving very quickly to get their program. So when you look at laws, it's not just about a law that does X. It's about understanding the people that are underneath that law and how they're going to behave. But it's more important is what are the regulators thinking, and what is the next evolution of another law that's going to come? And that's why I continue to say my biggest prediction is the way cannabis gets legal in the United States. Okay, this is my biggest prediction. I've been saying this for a year and a half, so it's not that big of a prediction. It is a descheduling of cannabis off the schedule and legalization of the financial components. That is the only, there's a lot of paths, but that is the only path I see that preserves what states want. You know, states go through this rigorous process. They spend years building these laws.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense. New York just passed one of the most comprehensive social equity structural, you know, forms for a state. You think they need, it's so ironic that Chuck Schumer wants to pass like this federal social equity program. If you want to expunge people's, if you want to expunge their records, you can do that with like a one-page law in the United States on the federal level. And the other thing is, it is a complete misnomer for how many people currently are in jail on the federal level. Most people are in jail for drugs in states. Right. So
yeah, that's right.
The problem you're trying to solve isn't as big as what you're creating by not passing something, by not getting out of the way. And so I still think the only path that makes any sense, I mean, it could happen differently, but
this is the most pragmatic path forward.
Right. When you get to the maze, it feels to me that you can be, if it's The Shining, you can be, Jack Nicholson, or you can be the psychic kid.
Yeah.
The psychic kid gets out. Jack Nicholson keeps walking into the walls. The wall, right. Whether it's a social equity program that undoes what states have done, whether it's some type of comprehensive, new program that they're proposing in the COA, a new agency. There's no will on the American people side for new agencies at all. Right. In fact, I could see someone winning in 24 or 28 that's going to get rid of some of the federal agencies to begin with and start merging them because it's duplicative to the state level. So I just don't see there needing to be, a $2 billion, $3 billion budget at a federal cannabis agency that does what states do. Now,
yeah, it sounds good from politics, right? To say
right.
This grand thing I'm going to do.
And I could see it being, but look, whether there's import and export, yes, but that can be covered under, we have an EXIM bank. We have export and import rules. Eventually, cannabis isn't going to be treated differently. Right now, it is the most overregulated substance on earth.
Yeah.
Period, full stop. They just did a study yesterday in California dispensaries. Someone did like a spot check. 100% of the consumers who went into dispensaries had their licenses checked when they went in for underage. 100%. Wasn't 99.5? So people are complying with the rules, which is why cannabis is more expensive legally. And I think when you get to the fact that cannabis operators are operating completely responsibly and following the rules and doing the packaging and sending everything out to lab test, when you do all of that, you get to a realization that just take it off the schedule, legalize the finance. You don't need to overregulate. The companies who have made it to this part, they've done a responsible job of getting here. And, that's just a myth. And it's also, it's really frustrating when I hear that, MSOs are just out for money. I mean, tell that to Kim Rivers, who's been at every opening. She goes there and she serves cannabis to people who are sick. Tell that to my partners, my original partners at Leafline Labs in Minnesota, with the videos that we used to get from people whose kids now are, off of whatever drugs were holding them back with epilepsy, who are now, seeing improvements in their lives. Tell that to any parent who has moved or illegally transported cannabis back for their kids. It's not just about the economic imperative. It is when it comes to stocks and stuff. But when you look at that, is the tip.
You can have both. You can have both.
You can, exactly. People saying like, it's just about big companies. It's not, there's no, the fact that people think of like Trulieve, Cresco, Curaleaf as like these huge companies that are crushing people is crazy. They're not like oil and gas companies that are worth like 500 billion that can literally these are companies that at a lot of ways are run, on a hyper local basis. They're just conglomerated into an earnings statement. And so I just think there's such a misunderstanding around that. And I think that's going to change when you see the human face of legalization and how it's changing. And, we still have to be cognizant of youth usage and impaired driving and all those things, but you can do that in the framework of descheduling and treating cannabis like a normal consumer good. You can't tell me it's not as better from a consumption standpoint than alcohol. I mean, it's either equal or better. So that's my view. And I think it's changing. Wow. We see that changing on the front end. And that's, by the way, that consumer data or that understanding of the mindset of what stigma does to consumption is the golden key to huge returns in the future. And to be honest, that's where we're investing our time. We're trying to understand what legalization and what normalization look like on a day-to-day basis in people's lives and how that affects their views and consumption of cannabis, patient, consumer, otherwise.
Profound stuff, Mitch. And, and we've discussed too, just this is that, it's that order of thinking that is just really like, you got to look at everything holistically, like looking over here on how this lifestyle change, what cannabis drives in different lifestyle changes, like even the millennial cohort, how they relax, how they enjoy themselves is much different. The trajectory going forward, as we've talked about, is much different than, how someone of that age group would have partied in the 80s, right? It's very different.
Yeah.
So let me make one other prediction that just is right off that. And it's something I've been noodling. And, look, predictions, you want to be right. But the truth is, if you're not wrong on some of your predictions, you're not moonshotting your idea set, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to moonshot an idea set. This is a prediction that I think is going to happen in 22. I usually want to give myself a little leeway on the duration of these predictions because things move slow or fast. But okay, let me give you to the middle of 23, baby, because I'm thinking about this. This is moonshot.
All right, we'll give you 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so by the middle of 23, there will be an insurance company that offers an insurance plan that covers cannabis as a differentiator to other insurance companies who are going to be sold, and people will flock to that insurance, not necessarily because they want free cannabis, but there will be more of like, the way that people used to have catastrophic risk on top of there will be an insurance company that is going to say, okay, there is a cohort of 32% of people under 40 have consumed cannabis in this month. We can provide them data. 22% of those people are doing it from, relaxation, sleep. We know that 18% of our patients are taking Ambien. Ambien costs this much, cannabis costs this much. Because here's one thing that we all know: anyone who consumes cannabis, and New York did this in their law, the first thing they were trying to rectify is how much it costs out of pocket. But more importantly, is we know that cannabis is not an expensive medicine. It's not. It's very cheap, actually. $50 of cannabis for a newer consumer is like enough for the month. For sleep or digestive issues or otherwise. And so my prediction is there will be an insurance company who will try to make a splash with the younger cohort and try to, it'll be like a sexy insurance company that's VC backed. I don't know what it's going to be, but the way Affirm and pay as you go didn't exist 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
My prediction is an insurance company is going to say, you know what, it's moving this way already. We're trying to make a splash. Insurance isn't usually a splashy industry, but someone where there's a chance to hype it up.
There.
So that's my prediction by the middle of 23.
That's smart stuff.
Wow.
Smart stuff.
Well, Mitch, thank you for always being, very generous with your insights. We love catching up with you. And so everyone, this is Mitch from Merida Capital. They are, these insights, man. Like
maybe 5 years from now, you guys will actually pronounce it Merida, which is what it's pronounced as.
Right,
maybe one day you guys will get it right, but you get Baruchowitz right.
We're gonna make you keep coming on until we get it right.
You know what, Mitch? I'm gonna go find an insurance company and lean on them heavy this afternoon.
Well, hey,
let's go find one.
You know what happens? You put your prediction out there, and then people start to think, and some guys like, you know what? I own a sleepy insurance agency. How much would it cost? And then when you go through the econometrics of it, you can figure out that if the premiums are right sized, insurance companies are about money. At the end of the day, they're not really about making you healthier. They're about, hey, what's the cost benefit of any one substance or modality?
Sure.
So, that's my view.
All right. Well, as always, Mitch, thank you for being on the show. Great to see you.
Guys, Mitch, thank you so much. Guys, give Mitch a round of applause with some claps, some thumbs up. If you haven't retweeted, do that too, guys. Thank you so much. Back to back, Grizzle Cannabis Con, Grizzle Psychedelics Con. Can't wait to do it up again. A special reminder, a first for Grizzle and our conference series. Next Thursday, we are doing Grizzle Commodity Con. It is going to break all records of records. The lineup is beyond stacked. We're going to have details coming out on Friday. Look forward for you guys to see us next week. And thank you so much for joining us here. And we'll do it up again. Follow us on Twitter at Grizzle Media. We're going to tweet out the segments so you have them as well.
Speaker list and get you all set up.
Exactly.
Because, this is what segment's doing well this year. It's energy.
Yeah.
And we're bringing on the guests that are throwing lots of money to work all around. So it's easy way to understand where to invest.
Exactly. So guys, Follow us on, we'll give you guys all the break apart every one of the segments, tweet them out tomorrow, day after for Psychedelics Con, Cannabis Con, then obviously for Commodity Con. Stay tuned. And listen, thank you so much for sticking us. This has been I think we get a ton, we host this full day, but the insights that we get out of this, these are the questions we want to answer, right? It's not like we have the answers to this last 40 minutes.
We're investors, remember? So we're just asking the questions we would want to know that would make us comfortable to put money into something. So hopefully it's been helpful for all of you.
Guys, thank you so much. And thank you for the support of Grizzle. Please share this with a friend. Tell somebody, because we're back at it next Thursday. Let's go.
Let's go.